Chapter 9. Purification Ritual and Rahvdall's Warning. As Romonus and McGregor waited, the mage began to go into another lecture on what Romonus needed to improve. He felt that his control over his demonic energy was excellent, and he had Latin down. While his race allowed him to translate any language into English, it did not remove his ability to learn other languages. McGregor nodded as the student had been doing excellently since he began to teach him. You are an excellent student of the art of magic. Even if you were human, I'm sure you would have gotten the art down. Romonus brought up what he had wanted for a while now. I have been wanting to ask my brother to train me personally. Will he do it? McGregor sat down in a chair he conjured out of magic. Despite how busy he is, he will take time to train you. Unlike you, he was just born an extreme outlier. Who knows why, but he truly thinks that you will become the next super devil based on talent alone. I mean, you are 11 years old, and you are in the ultimate class already. If I am not wrong, the ritual you are going to undergo will push you even further into it. You have been learning under us, so that is the result, and you are talented as well. Romonus smiled as he truly had 3 legendary beings as his teachers. At that moment, in a puff of darkness, the Harvester returned. Romonus and McGregor turned toward the cloaked being who floated toward Romonus. He held out the bloody, still beating heart to Romonus, who held out a palm. The Harvester placed the heart into his hand, but instead of leaving, he floated around Romonus a few times. McGregor was confused as it should return to the spirit realm. Romonus was confused as from what his teacher told him the Harvester would only stay until his one request was complete. Do you need something? He stopped spinning around Romonus before he patted his head with a bony hand on Romonus' head 3 times. With that, he burst into smoke and vanished. Romonus placed a hand on his head, wondering what that was about. Master, he took a liking to you. If you call him again, I am sure he will answer. I will tell you more about the spirit realm when I get a chance. Romonus nodded as he took a look at the heart in his hands. McGregor walked toward him and took the heart from him. Several analytical spells moved around the heart for a few moments before McGregor nodded. Perfect. Diodora may have been a slimy prick, but he was still a pure-blooded noble. Just at this young age, he had quite a lot of demonic energy. Nowhere near you, but we are not adding his energy to your reserves. We are going to use it to refine and purify your own, which is already very pure because of your Gremory and Bale lineages. This is going to be good. When can we begin? Do I need to recover or something? McGregor thought about it before he sat back down in his chair. Take 30 minutes, and here. He tossed Romonus a magic stone which Romonus began to absorb. Demonic energy and mana were almost the same thing, with demonic energy being mana in an altered state to suit devils. It was why with a quick conversion, he could use mana like this to recover his reserves quickly. McGregor in the meantime walked over to the now burnt ritual circle on the floor. He waved his hand, and any trace of the ritual was destroyed, and the wood floor was back into a pristine state. He kneeled down, and unlike Romonus, he kept blood in standby. He pulled out a bottle of his own blood which he poured onto the ground. Considering he constantly experimented with magic and the user's blood worked best, he had plenty of it on standby. In a few moments, he had shaped the blood on the ground into another ritual circle. Along with it, he pulled out 10 magic stones of great purity. Soul stones were rarer, and he was only allowed to make them out of criminals, so he had less than he would like. Though for a mage like him, he could make these stones with ease as he had his study where effectively mass-produced these. He also placed the heart of Diodora along with the stones which were still beating. Everything Diodora had been transferred into the heart, his energy, his soul, his life force. All of it was trapped in the beating organ. With a smirk, McGregor stood up. Should have been stronger. The stone he gave to Romonus crumbled into dust as he had drained it of energy. He only took another 10 minutes to settle down his energy before he opened his eyes. I am ready. McGregor motioned for him to walk forward. Come on, stand in the circle, and don't step on the ingredients. I will tell you that Ajuka will know the Harvester was involved. Then again, moving against a thing like that will be tricky even for Beelzebub. Is there a risk of him finding us? McGregor smiled. We can only hope. Romonus stood in the middle of the circle, not so confident now. No chance. McGregor shook his head. Nah, this one is easy. I will activate it, you just focus on not exploding. Romonus closed his eyes and waited as McGregor activated the ritual circle. The blood ritual instantly took effect, and the heart of Diodora burst apart into a bloody red mist. The 5 stones along with it exploded one after the other into blue mist, which mixed with the demonic energy contained in Diodora's heart. The red and blue mist began to rise into the air before it entered Romonus' nostrils. He took a deep breath, and he made sure to breathe all of it in. When he did so, he instantly felt the mana and demonic energy mixture move throughout his body. Instantly, he began to feel the demonic energy of a noble devil begin to be used up to purify his energy. Devils innately were an artificial race created by Lucifer from Lilith's body, so they had limitations. Devils like Ajuka, Surzex, and Rizavim were what they could become once those limitations were removed. And then again, he planned to go beyond what his brother had been able to achieve, so everything was fair game. Romonus raised his hands and clasped them together as he kept all the energy he had absorbed into his body. McGregor was curious about what he was playing at, but inside Romonus' body, the energy contained in Diodora's heart and the 5 stones continued to increase the purity of his energy. As this process began, he started to circulate through his body. He felt how it surged through his bones, circulatory system, nerves, and magic circuits. Every being who used magic had them in their body, and he was no exception, but the surge of purer energy caused them to expand and grow. Romonus had always felt he had good circuits, but once his energy grew to this level, he knew there was always more to improve. The process lasted for an hour before all the energy he absorbed was used up. He took a few moments to stabilize his condition, but when he opened his eyes, his aura filled the room. Only the wards that McGregor had set up when he arrived kept everything contained. He grinned when he felt the aura of power that Romonus released. If there were levels in the ultimate class, I say you would be halfway to the middle of it. Though, your brother was born at this level, so it's whatever. Romonus snorted as he sat down in his chair. Yes, my brother is effectively a god among our race. He was born great, and he worked even harder to get where he is. Honestly, how lucky am I to be his brother? Seeing the proud look on his face made McGregor walk over and ruffle his hair. At least you're not jealous of his power. He snorted again. You think I will fall to something like petty jealousy? My brother is almost 600 years old. I am 11 years old. He fought near the end of the Great War and the Devil Civil War. He has had centuries and real combat experience. I take pride in being the brother of Surzex Lucifer. Don't forget it. McGregor smiled as he pulled out a grimoire from midair. Here, a gift from me. I wrote it, by the way. When Romonus looked at the title, he was shocked. Soul Arts. McGregor nodded. Souls are something barely understood even by mages like me. That Gremory has everything I have learned in my 150 years on this earth. Make use of it, Romonus. And ask your brother to train you himself. You both were born with the Gremory and Bale traits, only that he was born as an anomaly. If it were not for him, you would be one of the greatest talents of this generation. Oh right, now that you're in the ultimate class, expect your training to match it. Suji and Surtur will be quite happy to push you more. Romonus smiled as his teacher teleported away, leaving him alone. He looked down at the grimoire and placed a hand on the hard leather cover. Honestly, these old dudes just keep laying the gifts on me. He shook his head as he placed the book into his spatial ring. He was in no position to begin training in it as he needed to focus on stabilizing his condition. He stood up and changed his clothes once again. It went from a fancy suit into some shorts and a tank top. Oh right. Before he forgot, he used his demonic energy to wash himself off and clean his teeth. As he lay in bed, he looked at the ceiling as he thought of his new life. Honestly, it's fun. He now had a fiancée, was an ultimate class being, and his family was amazing. Still, he had a goal he had to achieve, as only by being a devil god or demon god could he hope to match the DxD gods. Remembering the latest volumes of DxD, he shook his head as he focused on sleeping. He scoffed at the notion that Issei could defeat beings who could kill Great Red with 12 chosen heavenly breasts. It sounded so damn stupid, but this was DxD, where brains died after all. When he finally did fall asleep, he had expected to just sleep, but instead, he was back with Rahvdall. When he saw the god of insanity, he smiled. Boss, it's been 11 years. How's it going? Rahvdall smiled his creepy smile once again. It's going wonderful. The fate of that world is starting to truly go out of control, and I am all for it. I just wanted to bring you here to inform you that if you keep up the good work, I just might throw in a bone or two for you. Romonus got the gist of it. Rewards. Rahvdall nodded. Yup. Good progress, by the way. You're going to need it. That's ominous. Rahvdall raised his hands. Tends to happen when fate is broken. Good luck. When Romonus came to, he was back in his bed, as it was the morning now. Okay, just as I expected. Breaking the fate of a world won't go without consequences. For starters, I need to work on this. Throughout the night, his energy reserves had been stabilizing themselves, and he only needed a little bit of effort to get them under control. He knew his teachers would put him through the gauntlet, and today Rias would begin training. He also had a new demon sword to master, or it would begin to steal his lifespan. I got my work cut out for me, it seems. Oh well, I won't have it any other way. Chapter 10. Aura/Tuki. Quick question, looking for ideas, but the power rankings I normally use are low, mid, high, ultimate, Satan, heavenly dragon, dragon god, and DxD. But what is a better name for the Satan rank? When Romonus woke up, he pulled out his phone, which was produced by a Juka. They were better than the most modern iPhones and could be charged with just a bit of demonic energy. When he checked the time, he smiled as it was 6:30 a.m. He still had 30 minutes before he had to present himself for training. If he was lucky, he would be able to see his brother, and if he was not too busy, he could ask him for some pointers. But then again, arriving on time is late. He waved his hand, causing his suit to fall into place on his body. When he was dressed, he pulled his boots into his hands, but before putting them on, he shined and cleaned them with a simple spell. He put them on and got up to leave his room. As usual, he locked his room before he created a teleport circle under his feet. In a burst of light, he appeared in front of Ria's room, as her room was quite far from his. Plus, rather than walk, it was better to just teleport. Once he appeared in front of her room, he opened the door and rushed in. Rias, wake up, wake up. Up in at him. Rias, who had been having a pleasant dream, was awoken suddenly, causing her to jump. With groggy eyes, she fell out of bed onto her face. Oh. He couldn't help but laugh at her, as she had not been woken up like that before. When Rias realized who it was, she rubbed her eyes as she tried to wake up. Brother? What are you doing? He walked toward her and grabbed her hand to pull her to her feet. She was barely awake and her bed hair looked hilarious. Even her nightgown was all frizzy and cute, making him shake his head. She was still 11 after all. He patted her cute head, causing her hair to straighten out. Training starts in half an hour. Of course, you can just refuse, but you know the consequences. Big Bad Riser will eat you. And by eat, I mean force you onto his bed. Romonus stuck his tongue out and raised his hands over his head to freak her out. Her face instantly pulled back into fear as she shoved him back. No, I won't quit. I will train. Don't let him take me. She looked quite spooked, so he smiled and reassured her. I won't let him take you, Rias. But if Surzex and I do everything for you, what will you do in 500 years? You got to take charge of your own life at some point, right? She thought about it before she nodded with a determined look on her face. You right, brother. When do we start? Soon. He raised his hand and formed a magic circle above her head, which turned her nightgown into some proper workout clothes. Once she was dressed, he stood next to her and grabbed her hand. Image here. Get ready. Just promise me you won't quit. I won't. Rias barely remembered the last time she had tried to train along Romonus. She was about 7 if her memory served her correctly. He had dragged her along with him, and Sigi, Searcher, and McGregor all pushed her hard, which caused her to quit in an hour. At the time, being treated so harshly after living in luxury for her whole life was scary. Despite knowing they only had her best wishes in mind, her brother's knight, rook, and bishop could all be scary people. And Romonus had been training with them since he was 5 years old. Now, she would take charge of herself and not run anymore. Romonus opened a teleport circle under their feet and teleported them to the devil capital of Lilith. Their brother Surzex ruled over the city alongside his 3 goofball friends. More specifically, he teleported in front of his brother's castle, where he conducted his official Satan duties. Rias instantly began to look around in wonder, as it had been 4 years since she came with him. We're back. Instantly, both Rias and Romonus were enveloped in pillar-like arms. Ha 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 ha, the kids are back. Romonus instantly knew who it was, so he turned his neck to look at one of his teachers. Second, sir. Good to see you. Surtur Second was without question the strongest rook of the underworld. He was called the ultimate rook, and his name Second was because the Norse gods tried to clone the original, making him the second. But when they couldn't control him and he went berserk, they abandoned him as he was too difficult to kill or lock up. Until Surzex found him and helped him bring his power under control. Once he calmed down, he accepted Surzex's offer to join his peerage, and under a mutation rook piece, he was turned into a devil. Romonus and Rias as well? Today is a grand day. He hugged them even tighter, which made Rias gasp for air. She began to pat his arms to not be crushed, but Romonus tried to force his way out of the hug. Second, you're going to kill them. Ah, my bad. Second, let go of them, which made Rias gasp for air. Romonus took a few deep breaths to steady his breathing, as Second was a fire giant with a mutation rook piece, making him monstrously strong. Once he got his breath, he turned to his sword teacher Suji Okita, the best knight of the underworld. In life, he had been the Shizangumi captain. Despite being a knight, he was skilled at magic rituals which he had tried to use to cure his tuberculosis, which was fatal at the time. In a last-ditch effort to survive, he summoned a devil which just so happened to be Surzex, who saved him by turning him into a devil. It took both his brother's knight pieces, but it was worth it in the end. However, from the look of it, McGregor wasn't here. Romonus gave a polite bow, as these two men deserved the greatest respect. "Hello again, master. Will Mathers not be here today?" Suji shook his head as he sat on a rock. "No. He said he will be busy with his studies, so he told us to spend more time training you. I heard your uncle gifted you a demon sword. I wonder how he knew you could wield demon swords." Romonus did wonder about that. Maybe he tested my talent beforehand, or he just assumed I would. Suji pondered on it before he shook his head. "Regardless, you can wield them. On another note, I see you got stronger again. Expect your training to match it." Romonus was now feeling excited to learn higher stuff. "I wouldn't have it any other way. Where do I begin?" Surtur and Suji looked at each other before the knight pulled out a coin from his pocket. He flipped the coin and called the side he wanted. Heads. Second crossed his arms with a grin. Tails. When the coin fell into his hand, he flipped it onto the back of his hand. When they both looked at the coin, Second began to laugh as it landed on Tails. Suji groaned as he tossed the coin to Surtur. "All right then, guess I will be helping Rias. Don't worry, I won't make you swing a sword. Instead, I will have you use your power of destruction in more refined ways, along with being able to use it on the move. Ready?" Rias nodded with a determined look on her face. "Yes, sir." As for Surtur, he turned to Romonus before he tossed off his trench coat, revealing his muscular body. He was over 2 meters tall with copper-toned skin and a body fitting of a Jotun. He jumped back the distance of a football field and raised his arms with open palms. "Let's go." Romonus smiled as with a wave of his hand the upper part of his outfit fell off. He stored it in his ring to not leave it on the ground. Thanks to Surtur's training regiment, despite his age, he had cultivated an exceptional physique. It couldn't compare to his teacher, but it was a work in progress. Thanks to these brawls and the insane training he underwent under the Jotun, he was close. He could feel it was just a matter of time before he tapped into his Tuki, or aura. He raised his hands into fists and got ready for the beating he was sure to receive. Both he and Surtur did not move until the bell sounded off, which was Rias attacking Suji with a blast of destruction. Instantly, Surtur charged toward Romonus, who turned into a blur as he charged against his master. He pulled his arm back and smashed his fist against Surtur's liver, but he didn't even dent the muscle. Hatha. More power. Surtur spread his arms wide as Romonus began to throw a flurry of punches against the fire giant without effect. Damn it. It's Itadori versus Mojito. Each time he landed a punch, it did not sound like he was hitting flesh. It was like he was hitting pure metal, but Surtur kept his grin before he gazed down at him with burning eyes. Romonus couldn't even react before Surtur's giant palm smashed into his face, launching him into the distance. Surtur charged after him as Romonus flipped midair to land on the ground. His feet dug trenches in the ground as he charged towards Surtur. He jumped in the air as he tried to land an uppercut against the giant, but the mad Jotun used his chin to smash against his fist. The power Surtur held caused Romonus to be forced into a crater in the ground. Surtur snarled as he shoved his arm into the ground and pulled Romonus out like a carrot. Romonus was bruised, but he was not out. He spun around like a honey badger and twisted Surtur's wrist to get loose. He leapt off Surtur's arm and landed a massive kick to the head of Surtur, but he just used his head to lock Romonus' leg against his shoulder. Nice. With his free hand, he grabbed Romonus' face and leaped high into the air. Just when they reached a truly staggering height, he turned to Romonus, who now was feeling very afraid. He kept punching at Surtur's hand as it was covering his whole face. Good luck. He pulled back and tossed Romonus straight down like a meteor. Romonus screamed as he tried to fix his fall, but Surtur put so much force into his throw. Surzex sighed as he did his boring paperwork as a Satan. Grafia wouldn't let him slack off, and he was not even in his fancy chamber, but in this dingy office. Just as he was going to continue, he heard a familiar scream. Huh. He looked out the window and saw Romonus falling to the ground. He got up and looked out the window to see Surtur in the sky and Suji with Rias. His eyes lit up as he was about to join them in training his siblings, but he paused. Grafia was going to be here soon, and if she saw he was slacking, she would tie him to his chair until he was done. But his adorable siblings were right there. He could skip just one day, right? When he imagined his wife and her angry face, he smartly sat back down. Good luck, Romonus. As for Romonus, he did not use his wings as this was the training. Only hands and no energy. He only had a few moments before he hit the ground, which would hurt like hell. He stopped panicking and instead closed his eyes. He crossed his arms around his chest and stuck his legs together. He did not use his demonic energy or anything of the sort, but just before he hit the ground, a white aura began to form around his body. He had finally reached his life force, more commonly called Tuki. Sarap began to grin wildly as he saw that. He finally got it. Romonus opened his eyes the instant his feet touched the ground. He leapt back into the air with a double jump. Sarap snarled as he leapt down with his fist pulled back. Around his body, a fiery red Tuji formed as he too had his unlocked. Come on. Show me your power, Romonus. Yes, sir. Romonus pulled his fist back and punched against Sarap's giant fist. When two Tuki users clashed, the one with the stronger life force would win. And no matter how talented he was, Romonus was not going to defeat Sarap, who had been using his for nearly 300 years. His own was forced back into his body, and he was thrown down to the ground in a crater. It was a miracle he was not unconscious as Sarap leapt down. You good? Romonus raised a shaky thumb. Peachy. He went limp as Sarap helped him up. That was fun, wasn't it? Romonus nodded. It was, but painful. Ha 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 ha. Pain just shows how we live. Now, recover. Suji's up next. They both looked toward Rias, who was forming large orbs of destruction much like their brother's signature move. Suji dodged and sliced them, but was impressive that she got it down so quickly. Romonus smiled as Rias was super talented naturally. She just needed someone or something to motivate her, and he was that motivator. She truly is the best. Chapter 11. The End in Threads of Destruction. All right, I have taken everything that I have seen and commented on and gone back to edit the previous chapters. Some had minor fixes, while others got some rewrites. Thank you for the commentary. Your criticism helps me improve. Rias was starting to tire out as Suji was relentless. Every time she launched an attack, he would weave, dodge, or cleave through them. Sometimes her attacks were just waves of destruction which were easy to dodge or tear apart for him. He would then tell her that the intensity of her power of destruction was lacking in control or weight. Romonus and Surzex both were monsters when it came to pod power of destruction. Surzex in his true form was essentially pod in a human form. When he used it, his power was so immense even gods feared it. Suji was unsure how strong he was, but Surzex was many times stronger than the original Lucifer. As for Romonus, he had yet to reach this level of mastery, but he had already found his path. He would form his pod into thin string-like strands which allowed him to dismantle, cleave, and annihilate with hundreds if not thousands of threads of pure destruction. This was further increased by his gravity magic, which crushed everything in a general area, inverted gravity, or turned into solid constructs of gravitational energy with interesting effects. Romonus also was a skilled sword fighter as well, but he would often destroy his swords. Only by infusing his demonic energy and blood into the metal could he prevent this. At the moment, Romonus and Sarap were watching and waiting for Ria's large reserves to run out. They watched as her face turned into a frown as Suji still had his eyes closed. She looked over to Romonus, who raised his hands and pushed them together. Seeing the clue, she smiled as she did as he said. She placed her hands together and began to force her pod into shape. This made the knight open his eyes as he watched her launch a small orb of destruction at him. He smiled as she learned quickly, just like her brothers. Even if one of them gave her the clue. Good job. He raised his katana and sliced it down with a single hand. From his blade, a massive blade of demonic energy cleaved her attack, which exploded with a massive explosion. Rias raised her arms to protect her eyes from the wind, but when she opened her eyes, she saw a huge 10-meter crater of destruction. Rias was curious now. Was that me or you? Suji pointed at her. That was you. Awesome. She jumped for joy as she learned something. She ran over to Romonus, who had already put his upper clothes back on. Did you see that, brother? I did what you told me? He smiled as he ruffled her hair a little. Sure did. Surzex taught me that one. Rias, you need to find your way to use power of destruction. Each one of us should have a way we use it while I have my own. I never did show you right. Rias shook her head. No. Romonus smiled as he walked over to the open field. All right then, stand back. Surtur grabbed Rias and jumped away as when Romonus got destructive it was not pretty. Surzex at this point began to use his demonic energy to speed up his movements as he worked through his paperwork at lightning speed. He would have to talk to Ajuka to get his computer set up already as this was hell. Luckily, he got finished soon enough and walked over to the window. Without his wings, he jumped down and landed quite next to Sutter, Suji, and Rias. Romonus smirked when he saw his older brother. "Finish your homework, brother? Should I tell Graphia you're slacking?" Rias looked next to her as she was still being carried in one of Surtur's arms. "Hi, brother." Surzex waved at Rias with a smile. "Good to see you again so soon, Rias. If you must know, Romonus, I am done with my work. Now, let's see your technique. Suji here tells me it is so amazing." Romonus looked back at the open field as his demonic energy, which was massive from birth, was released. Thanks to his noble heritage, he was born with gigantic reserves, and training had only elevated them to new heights. The spell of purification he underwent the night before also increased the power behind his energy. He could do more with less, and he was going to be using it. From his entire body, waves of pod were released, which quickly became a massive mass of crimson-black destruction. At first, he seemed to just be releasing it wildly, but that quickly changed when he focused on his energy. Instantly, the massive amounts of pod he was releasing spun apart into hundreds of thin strands spinning around him, tearing up the field around him. The number of them continued to grow as he continued to create more of them. His reserves were enormous, so he could keep this up for a long time. He crossed his arms and with just his mind began to control the truly massive amount of giant threads. With perfect control, the threads of destruction began to rapidly cleave the area around and in front of him. Romonus acted as if there was a foe in front of him and uncrossed his arms to use his hands to direct his energy. With a move of the hand, huge number of threads cleaved through a large area of the field. He then came back with more to reduce everything in a general location to small cubes, which then vanished into nothingness. He raised his other hand and began to weave threads together into massive pillars, which he repeatedly into the same location, causing the field to shake. Romonus raised his hands into the air and collected all the pod threads into an orb that fit into his hand. He placed both of his hands around the orb while adding more pod and using powerful gravitational energy to force it into shape. Surzex focused and felt that this move was going to be good. He started to rub his hands together as Romonus felt it was enough. "Since you call your move Ruin the Extinction, I will just call this move the End." Surzex smiled as Romonus tossed the orb in his hands into the sky. Rias, Surtur, Suji, and Surzex looked up wondering what it was going to do. It continued to rise higher until Romonus felt it reached the perfect height. He smiled as he snapped his fingers, and instantly his orb burst apart. Instantly, a massive orb of gravitational energy and pod formed in the air. The End was a move meant to destroy everything, and already everyone in the city of Lilith could see it. The gravity of Romonus' move began to pull everything toward it in the air. Loose items, anything not nailed down, began to fly into the sky. Surzex was about to intervene before things got dangerous, but Romonus raised his hand and dispersed it into energy. He wiped his forehead as that move was draining, but he could cast another 3 before he was out of energy. He then turned to his brother with a smile. "What do you think?" Surzex thought about it before he smirked. "Both of your moves are impressive. Combining gravity and the power of destruction is smart. Can you do that on a smaller scale?" "Of course. That was just an end-all move meant as AF*CKU to everything in a general area. Imagine if I had launched that in the city." Surzex raised his hands. "Please don't do that. And I know what would happen. I can do the same and more." Romonus thought he was seeing things, but he could swear his brother's nose was growing longer. Surzex looked to the sky and bragged about his greatness. "Your move was strong, but I can do it bigger, stronger, faster, and easier. If I so wanted to, I could destroy the whole underworld if I released the great power contained in my body." "Yes, your older brother is amazing." Ha 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 ha. Rias turned to look at Surzex with a deadpan expression. "He's off the rocker again." Second, still carrying Rias, began to tiptoe away while Suji just vanished. Romonus sneaked away while Surzex continued to laugh. "But if you so asked, I will graciously train you on how to use your power just like me. Don't be shy. I do not mind." When he looked down, the only thing he was left with was the empty field. The wind blew through the field as he looked around. Where did everyone go? Just then he heard what he did not want to hear. Surzex. When he turned around, he saw Graphia glaring at him. She looked at the destroyed field and then at her husband. He raised his hands as he tried to defend himself. "Wait, it wasn't me. It was Romonus. He did this." Graphia crossed her arms, not believing him. "Oh, really? Then where is he?" "I heard a giant orb of power of destruction formed in the sky. I am getting reports of the chaos, and now the field is a mess too." He left. Suji, Surtur, and Rias were here training like always. They just ran off, leaving me with the mess. I swear. Graphia looked behind him and shook her head. If that is true, then they should clean the mess. You're lucky your paperwork is finished. Sirzex nodded. Exactly. I got my work done. And my new computer will be ready soon. Graphia smiled at her husband as when he was not slacking off he was a wonderful husband. All right then, let's find them and make them clean this. Sirzex grinned as he would enjoy this game of cat and mouse. You bet. Meanwhile, Serta ran with Rias on his shoulder with a laugh. We are home free. Rias smiled as she looked at the giant man. Ice cream. He nodded with a big grin. Excellent idea. The best ice cream store in the underworld is here in Lilith. Let's go. He raised his fist into the air as he began to walk. Sirzex and Graphia teleported in front of them. Serta freaked out as he backed away. Fancy seeing you here. What do I owe the pleasure? Graphia walked forward with a serious expression. You forgot to clean the mess? Serta cleared his voice as he raised his arms. Mess? What mess? I have been with Rias the whole time. Right? She nodded. Yeah, we are going for ice cream. Graphia smiled as she pinched Rias' nose. Ow. 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 My nose. You little liar. You are going back, and you're going to clean your mess. Sirzex, you take them. I got Romonus and Suji to find. Right. As Sirzex teleported them back to the castle, Graphia teleported to her next target. As for Romonus, he began to walk towards Rahvdall's castle. He wanted to see if she was still doing paperwork by hand or got a computer. He also wanted to see if she knew about his and McGregor's summoning of the Rahvdall. The story his teacher told him was that spirits of the spirit realm could be summoned for single favors or contracted permanently. The Rahvdall was a spirit of death of considerable power. No one had contracted him and only asked favors of him. Ajuka would be searching for answers and hopefully, he did not find them. He decided to pray to God, his God. Oh, Rahvdall, God of insanity, please look after me. Amen. No pain, of course, but just as he was walking, Graphia appeared in front of him. Romonus looked up at the white-haired devil lady. Hi, Ani, nice to see you again. We saw each other yesterday, right? Graphia crossed her arms and smirked. Where are you going? I was going to visit Rahvdall, then Falbium, and then Ajuka. Why? You left a mess behind. He smiled. Really? My brothers got it handled, but if why dash? Suddenly he ran off. Haha. Too slow. Just as he was running at blinding speeds, he felt a firm hand grab his shoulder and lift him off the ground. The shockwave of stopping so suddenly made him look behind him to see Graphia. Auntie, you're faster than you look. Save it. Now to find Suji. Suji, instead of being caught, just gave up and walked out from the shadow of a tree. Fine, here I am. Graphia smiled as this was fun now and then. She put down Romonus before lightly bonking him on the head. Did you cause the black hole? He nodded. I call it the end. It is powerful. Just don't cast it in city limits. Yes, Auntie. Graphia smiled softly. My sister would have loved you. You two were the same. He knew her family was a sore subject as they were all dead except her brother. And he was a wanted criminal. Suji bowed and excused himself as he was only here to train Romonus. And he missed his chance for the day because of Rias. I will be back tomorrow for sword training. Thank you, Master. I will look forward to it. Suji walked off and vanished as if the wind. Once he was gone, Graphia ruffled his hair. Go visit Rahvdall. She is quite lonely despite how bubbly she is. Thanks, Ani Gray. He ran off, but Graphia stopped smiling when she heard what he called her. Hey. Ha 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 ha. She let him run off as that was why she liked him. He treated her just like a fun ant. She shook her head and teleported back to Sirzex. As for Romonus, he had a date with a Satan. Hopefully. Chapter 12. Miria, Romonus, and Rahvdall. FYI, Aquino was taken into the Gremory household a year and a half after her 10th birthday. So, 6 more months until arrives in Kuo. Also, Romonus and Rias' birthday is on April 9th. As Romonus walked through the capital city of Lilith, he passed the residents of the city who all looked shaken. He would be too if he saw a giant black hole of power of destruction appear above their home. Though, he did not talk to any of them as he moved east. The 4 castles of the Satans were separated north, east, west, and south, with the castle of his brother being north. Rahvdall's castle was in the east section of the city, so that is how he began to move. As he did, he began to think about how he could in any way woo Rahvdall. He did not want to do it just because his brother told him. He genuinely liked her for a few reasons. It took considerable willpower, self-respect, and loneliness to stay a virgin for almost 600 years. Even he as a human had slept with over 15 girls and women by age 17. Meanwhile, Rahvdall was a devil known for sin and was a virgin for many times his life. She had also never had a boyfriend or girlfriend, so he would be that. If she accepted him. He smiled as he walked through the city, which was high-tech thanks to Ajuka. Cars and fancy carriages moved through the streets depending on taste. The lights in the city ran on ambient mana and needed no outside input. The devils who called the capital home were happy and living their lives. Though at the current moment, a lot of the residents were shaken up. They were starting to relax and go back to their regular activities. As he walked, he remembered that he had something important to do. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and called his fiancée. He put it up to his ear as he heard it ring a few times. She quickly picked up his call as she had his ringtone set to something unique. Romonus, calling me already? She seemed happy to hear from him, which made him happy. Well, I would be a terrible fiancé to ignore you for a long time. We were engaged just yesterday out of the blue, so I wanted to ask you on a date. We skipped the dating stage to the engaged because of our status, but we can still take out time before our marriage. Latia thought about it as she was currently messing around in a mech she was assembling. As she was working, her phone floated near her so she could talk and simultaneously. That sounds nice, actually. Tomorrow seems good as I have no training scheduled. We can get to know each other more, and I can show you the results of my hobby, and you can show me yours. You did say you were getting into alchemy, right? Sounds good. I also should get this out of the way. Latia, how would you feel for me to have a harem? Latia went silent, which made Romonus feel on edge. He even stopped walking as he waited for her answer. Instead of saying how she felt, she asked him a question. Romonus, how many women do you think my father has in his harem? Ajuka's brother is her dad, so more than likely very few. If he is anything like his older brother, he will be reserved. 10. Latia instantly lost her composure at his lowball answer. Pff. She barely kept a straight face as she broke out laughing. No, not even close. He has 80 women in his harem, and I have no issue with it. Last week we were informed one of them fell pregnant, which is rare. Romonus did not expect the little brother of Ajuka to be such a man. When his older brother was a straight-up virgin, he had 80 ladies to himself. What a man. Congratulations on the sibling. I am glad with your answer. In that case, when I get a harem, would you manage it for me? My mother manages my father's harem as he has more than your father. But you can count that I won't have nearly that many. Latia felt that was fair as the head wife in the future. Sounds good. How many would you think would be an okay number, Romonus? I don't know. Numbers aren't what I am after. I would want women like you, with personality, goals, ambitions, drive, and attractive enough to dazzle the world. His words made Latia smile. He was good with words at least. Despite being 11, as devils they were far more mature than human children of similar ages. Anything higher than simple flirting was off the table for another 4 or 5 years, though. You flirt. See you tomorrow. I am almost done with my mech suit. Show me a picture when it's done. I will do you one better and let you wear it. Sounds awesome. I will let you sample some of my elixirs. They hung up the call, which made him smile. Latia was the best, and she was going to turn into a hottie in a few short years. He could hardly wait to marry her. Out of how happy he was, his wings emerged from his back. He only had 2, but they were very different from normal devil wings. His wings were larger, more muscular, and covered in runic tattoos he made himself. Instead of the thin stick wings of devils, his wings truly looked demonic. A perk of working under pure insanity, aka his boss. As for the runes, they pulsed a deep crimson, which he modeled after bloodthirster runes of hatred. They protected his wings from attack and magic, increased their strength. His unique wings were his pride and joy, so they deserved the best. Image here. With a powerful flap of his wings, he blasted into the sky as he flew east. He was not the only one flying, but he was certainly the fastest. A few devils were flying after his student, but a few were brave enough to risk it. Those could barely see him as he was that fast. He left after images and made it across the city in a minute. When he reached Sarap's castle, he retracted his wings and began to spin midair. He tucked his legs and landed in front with a heavy impact. He grinned and made a double peace sign. Crushed it. In front of the castle, 2 female devil guards turned to look at him. One of them looked to be about 30, and from the look of it already was used to his antics. She rolled her eyes as she leaned on her greatsword. She had long purple hair in a large braid with a mature voluptuous body. She looked quite a bit like Minamoto no Reika from Fate in his opinion. Image here. Her fellow guard looked to be about 16 with short blonde hair with a much slimmer body. Not like any Fate character despite what one would expect. The blonde did not recognize him, so she got her spear. Halt. This is Dash. Before she got done with her statement, the older guard bonked her on the head. Cut it out. I know the kid. Romonus, back to bother me again. He grinned as he hopped over before falling to one knee and pulling out a regular rose. He waved his hand and turned it purple just like her hair. Of course, how could I forget to come to visit the most beautiful lady of the underworld? You dazzle in the fake sun, Miria. Marry me. I swear to make you the happiest in the world. Miria rolled her eyes as he often came over to flirt with her. Since he was 9 of all things. Ha, sure. Why are you here, kid? Romonus placed the rose in her hand and stood back up. She did not throw it away and kept it. I am here to see the short queen. Sarap. The younger guard covered her mouth to contain her laugh. Miria stomped on her foot to keep her focused. It caused the new blonde's eyes to begin to water. Her superior did not hold back in her stomp. She could swear her foot was broken. Miria cleared her voice as she stepped aside. Go on. Sarap doesn't have many friends, and I'd rather you not flirt me to death, so go flirt with her instead. He placed a hand over his heart. Wow, Miria, that is how low you think of me. And here I thought I was getting past your icy exterior. She snorted with a pout on her face. I am not icy, you're just not my type. Grow a little older and bigger. Then we will see what happens. Take it or leave it. That just made him smirk as she was only 2 inches taller than him. Miria, I am 11. Give me 4 years and I will tower over you. As for muscles, I got that in spades. He flexed hard, causing the fancy suit he was still wearing from the ball to stretch. Surtur knew how to train a body, but Miria did not look. Her face got a little red as he was quickly starting to look like Saror did in the anime. Just get going. He just smiled in her direction. You know you like it, love. As he walked past Miria, he told her about something she was insecure about. A bit of an inside joke among them. As he was behind her, he looked at her ass and made a joke she hated. Oh right, your butt is starting to sag. Her eyes went wide as she spun around to kick him, but he was long gone. You asshole. Her ass was perfect and S*XY, but she just felt embarrassed about being 875 and not married. Nothing to be ashamed about, as his mother was about to turn 934 in 4 months. As Miria cursed up a storm, the blonde guard looked over at her ass, wondering if it was true. It didn't look to be sagging at all. Just then she heard the voice of the devil. Literally. What are you looking at? When she looked up, Miria looked red in the face out of shame and anger. She quickly made a lie on the spot. There is a rip in your pants? Miria's big purple eyes seemed about to cry with rage and shame. Lies. For that, you're going to have triple drills. Nuu. Sarap had a big smile on her face as she messed around with her new computer. It made everything so easy. She just scrolled, read, accepted, or denied with the click of a button. With how fast a devil like her could process information along with the aid of the tech of Ajuka, it freed up so much time. A job that would take hours of non-stop paperwork could be finished many times faster. She smiled as she remembered when Ajuka brought this over a few hours ago. He already had them made and was just waiting until they asked. She straight away asked him for one, and he delivered. Though she wondered why he seemed distracted. Though he is always distracted. Just as she finished this set of papers, the door to her office opened. She looked at who it was and saw Romonus. For the past year, he had been visiting her every week. Birthday boy. She got up from her chair and ran over to hug him. He hugged her back as well, but her strength still exceeded his by a fair bit despite being more of a mage. Despite him being in the ultimate class, she was at the middle point of the next rank, which Romonus was commonly called the Satan class by some devils. A better term for it would be god rank, split between weak gods, middle-class gods, high-class gods, and peak gods. Super devils, heavenly dragons, and beings on that level were hard to classify though. Sarap, I see you got your computer. She let go of him with a smile. Yeah, check it out. I can even play games, or video call my Sona. Want to play a game? Sure. When we get done with that, I was wondering if you would go on a date with me. Sarap titled her head. Huh? Me? With you? He nodded with a smile. Sure. I mean, you act more like someone my age than I do, so it fits. Sarap frowned at the hidden insult. You just called me childish. How rude. Now I won't go on a date with you. He smiled as he pinched her cute cheeks. No, I called you adorable. Quit it. She rubbed her cheeks when he let go. Did Jex put you up to this? That jerk. He shook his head. No. He sure asked, but I am doing it for me. I think you are cute and a pretty woman. It can be a simple outing as friends if you want. I got no rush. She began to chuckle as Romonus knew what he wanted and he went for it. I will bite. I got my work done thanks to this computer. Where do you have in mind? He knew several places someone like Sarap would enjoy. How about we go to this nice all-you-can-eat restaurant? The food is cheap and to die for. My treat. She thought about it carefully before relenting. Fine. He grinned in happiness. You won't regret it, Sarap. I never say it, but I love saying your name. It's cool. She smiled as she liked her name too. Thank you. That is so thoughtful of you. He chuckled as it seemed he was the older one of the two. The only difference was she had large breasts to go along with her short height. Come on then, before you get more work. Right. Let's go. When he and Sarap walked out, he winked at Miria, who grit her teeth like a feral lioness. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. That little brat will pay for playing with my heart. He will pay when I get my hands on him. Romonus would soon learn to not tempt older, single, lonely ladies like Miria. Chapter 13. A Date with a Satan and Zekrom Bale's Cruelty. After leaving her castle, Romonus and Sarap did not have to teleport or fly to reach the restaurant in question. It was a 5-minute walk from her castle, which she rarely got to do before she got her computer. The bureaucracy of the Devil Council and Great King faction was to keep the Satans occupied instead of at their throats. Because of Surzex, Ajuka, Sarap, and Falbium decided to not play nice, they would in theory take full control over devils. At least those that survived the Second Civil War, which was why they played along. They did not care about a ruling or anything of the sort, they just wanted to be with their loved ones and keep to their hobbies. In her case, dress up like a magical girl, which Romonus brought up. When did you get into your magical girl fascination? The 80s. She rubbed the back of her head with a smile. 90s, I was in Japan at the time meeting with the Shinto gods because we wanted to have territory in Japan. Amaterasu agreed to let us take partial ownership over Kuyo, as long as we followed some ground rules. No mass killing, keeping things down low, and not drawing attention to ourselves. During the meetings, I saw the first magical girl Milky Spiral anime and I was enthralled. Is that weird? He shook his head as they had already reached the restaurant. No. I like anime too, but I just prefer fantasy anime rather than that. Sarap smiled. Cool. Wanna watch it with me someday? Sure. I can give it a shot. Mind showing me how you transform? He might as well have told her to show him her life, which caused her face to beam with a smile so dazzling his heart skipped a beat. Sarap began to spin around and with glittery magical girl effects changed her outfit into her magical girl Milky Spiral 7 cosplay with the staff and everything. She winked at him and spun around. Sparkles shine, your command is mine. His eyes were drawn to her bouncing boobs before he looked away as if he was not say. He was not going to ogle her to death, though he did remember it. He started to clap with a smile on his face. You are the cutest Satan. Sarap frowned as she leaned on him, pressing her soft back against his body. That's not a contest, Romonus. Falbium is old and bald. Ajuka is a big frowny boy, and your brother Surzex is a big sibling con. He always brags about you, and Rhea is saying how proud he is to be your big brother. He carries pictures of you two around and brags about you two to the old Devil Council. Even those old fools who have been alive since devils were created have lost patience with him. Come on, don't get another compliment for me? Maybe something hotter. He got bold as he knew a girl like Sarap probably heard all this before. He reached down and wrapped his arms around her bare waist before pulling her in. Her face began to heat up as he hugged her tight. You are without question the cutest, most fun devil, Sarap Leviathan. She smiled as she looked up at his handsome face. You're quite bold, Romonus. Do you want me for your harem? You just got engaged and you're after my pure maiden heart too? What will Atiya say? He leaned down and rested his chin on the top of her hat. I asked her before trying my luck. She is okay with it. And you know what I told her? If I want someone for my harem, it is because they passed the criteria. She reached up behind her and ran a hand down his cheek. Are you 11? You're making my heart skip a beat. He smiled as he released her. Come on then, we can talk more over a meal. As for my maturity, when you're a noble, you're forced to mature quickly to deal with all the schemes. She smiled sadly as they walked into the restaurant. That is true. Just know that you got good points for all your words. Keep that up, and you just might win my heart over. Count on it, my lady. When they entered the restaurant, they paid for 2 for the buffet option. The girl at the register almost passed out when she saw not just the famous Gremory heir, but Sarap Leviathan on a date. At their restaurant, which was not fancy for nobles. It was more in use for reincarnated devils, as this was more of a human term, so most nobles would be caught dead before they entered here. As for Romonus, he did not care about nobility, and Sarap was open to try anything. So once they were given a table, they both got to pick out the foods they wanted, which was a mix of Chinese, Mexican, and Italian in a good mix. Once they were seated and they started eating, Romonus looked across from him as Sarap ate. Each time she tried a new dish, her face beamed in a happy smile. How did you find out about this place, and why have I never heard of it? He stuck a fork in a crab cake and brought it up to his mouth. I have been training at my brother's castle since I was 5 years old when his peerage began to train me. Sir II would take me out to have ice cream or eat at new restaurants opening up. This one opened up 5 years ago, and the food is excellent. As for how you never heard of it, do you have time to explore the city? Sarap sighed. True. Before I got my computer, I would spend hours with more and more paperwork. Now, I get my work done leagues faster than before. It freed up a big chunk of my day. I am glad it did, because then I can see more of your pretty face when you eat. She reached up and held her cheeks. Oh, you're so sweet. Am I really that cute? What do you like about me? Your long raven hair, your sparkling pink eyes, your bubbly face, and your personality too. You also are a powerhouse with authority to your name. When other pantheons think of the name Leviathan, who do they imagine? She leaned forward and rested her chin on her palms. Me. He nodded. Lady Sarap Leviathan, stronger than the original Leviathan on the merit of her efforts. Just having that makes you an outlier among our race. That is most important to me, a drive to improve. Sarap looked at her plate before looking up at him. You know, for that, I will give you a shot. I have had many suitors who were after my looks, my authority, my body, or my status, but to you, they are just something that defines me. I like that. He reached out across the table and held her hands. How does it feel that an 11-year-old is better than any of your previous suitors? She smiled playfully as she squeezed his hands gently. Better? Maybe. Haha, let's enjoy our meal as I'm sure you will have more work soon. She nodded as they went back to enjoying their meal. However, Romonus realized he was being followed. He looked up from his food and looked out the window of the restaurant. In the window of the restaurant, Miria was glaring right at him. Sarap was going to look at what he did, but he raised a hand and blocked her view. Ugh, it's nothing. Just a window cleaner. Oh. By that point, Miria was gone, making Romonus gulp. He may now have a stalker, which he did not expect. Did I go too far? Nah. When they finished eating, Sarap returned to her castle while Romonus teleported back to the Gremory household. He was quite happy that Sarap Leviathan was open to his advances as he really liked her. Despite her age, she acted more like a child than he did, which was saying a lot. When he returned to the mansion, he appeared directly in his room. Once he was here, he waved his hands and his suit flew off his body before falling into place over a mannequin. His battle suit flowed over his body once more as he now wanted to test something. He walked over to his door and locked it before sitting down on his bed. Romonus looked over at his right hand where he had his spatial ring. He brought out the demonic sword Blood Drinker. Even while in its sheath, he could feel the spirit of the sword hungering for blood. He slowly drew it out of its sheath and looked at the master-crafted demon sword. It was many times larger than regular longswords as it was bordering on becoming a great sword while remaining a longsword. He placed the sword on his lap and began to circulate his demonic energy through the blade. He closed his eyes as his Tuki of life force hummed to life at the same time as he reached out to the blade. The story his uncle told him was that the vampire who had their soul and body rendered down to create this had wronged the Bale clan. What that meant he did not know, which was bad enough that the Bale clan went after a vampire noble. They must have been a powerful noble because the aura this sword was giving off was off the charts. As he did this, he began to feel Blood Drinker call out to him. The spirit of the blade knew he was a worthy wielder, feeling the power he drew. But now that he had Tuki unlocked, he could feel life force in the blade. Either from the process it was made, all the blood it fed on, or the vampire was still alive. He did not know, but as he continued to reach the spirit of the sword, he fell into the trance. He appeared in a realm of pure darkness, which he assumed to be the soul of the sword. He looked across from him and saw a female in chains. Each chain ended in a spike that stabbed into her body in brutal ways, with devil runes of binding covering each one. As for the vampire herself, she looked young, 20s, with soft features. Blood constantly leaked from her wounds, so he walked forward until he was in front of her. She looked down at him with heterochromatic eyes. One was blood red and the other a familiar purple, though she also had a pair of wings and horns. You are not pure blood, you're a vampire-devil hybrid. She slacked in the chains before launching out, trying to bite his throat out. Instead, he grabbed her chin with one hand and leaned in to look her in the eyes with his own. Here is how it will work. You will make a contract with me. In exchange for me feeding you the blood of my enemies, you will not drain my lifespan or plot against my well-being. If you refuse this contract, I will simply render you down for scrap metal. Your choice, love. She snarled before yelling out at the world. Damn you, Zekrambiel. You and all of your descendants live to make me suffer. Fine. I agree. Using his devil powers, he formed the contract as she had been starved of blood for centuries. Her suffering was eternal, and unless she was fed blood, often the pain these demonic chains and runes inflicted on her was maddening. But they also protected her mind from breaking, making it a never-ending hell. Tears began to spill from her eyes as she looked at the ground. Please, free me. I don't want to suffer anymore. At that moment, the runes began to glow before he fired pure demonic energy through her body, which was her soul. Her screams filled the realm, but Romonus simply crossed his arms as she squirmed in pain. When the torture ended, she fell slack, feeling dead, but she was healed by the same things that tormented her. What did you do to piss off the Bale clan anyway, and what is your name? She looked up into his eyes, showing the pain and madness in her eyes. I am Vesper Carmilla Bale, and I killed my father, Zekram Bale's grandson, for the rape of my mother. As punishment, Zekram Bale himself hunted me down and had me turned into this damn sword. And you? I am Romonus Gremory, your distant relative. If what you say is true, your suffering might come to an end. If you are truthful to me, that is. Until then, I will get you the blood you need, Vespera. She fell slack once again, and he returned to his body. She didn't lie. Nothing she said was a lie, as their souls had been in contact. He felt the pain and the truth of her words. He raised Blood Drinker and looked into the screaming face on the crossguard. He leaned forward and rested his forehead against the blade. Don't worry, Vespera. I promise the day you walk free again will come. Just give me time. The blade did not respond, but he could swear that the presence seemed to calm. For now, he pulled a vial of his blood from his ring. He poured it along the blade and watched as his blood was drawn into the metal. Instantly through the contract he made with Vespera, he could sense her pain lessen. He would need to supply her with constant blood until he could free her because she did not deserve such a fate. He may not be a good guy, but this was beyond him. Rahvdall is a true devil to do this to his great-granddaughter, but he is the first devil made, so he must be the closet to a demon. With a shake of the head, Romonus placed Blood Drinker back in its sheath and kept it at his side. Chapter 14. Future Plans and Domain Expansion. Edited. Knowing that the vampire noble who had been turned into Blood Drinker was his relative, his thoughts on the matter changed greatly. By being in touch with her soul, he could feel her agony. She had only sought vengeance on her father for raping her mother, and the punishment was being tortured for centuries on end without being able even to go insane. That is dark. Even for me. He placed the sword onto his bed as the day was still early. He had plenty of time until tomorrow when he would have to present himself for sword training with Suji, and then his date with Latia. After I get my evil pieces, I should get a Kino for my bishop as she does not use the traits of the Knight of Rookwell. Someone better for that would be someone like Tiamat, the strongest Dragon King. Too bad I am not crazy enough to challenge her yet. Asia is an okay option, but she can't fight at all. Better to have her as a lovable healer rather than a fighter. He kept thinking of options as he had one picked out for his knight already. Tobio accused because of his Longinus Canis Lyacon. Issei at the start of the canon is 17 and Tobio is 22. And Tobio was 17 years old in the prequel novel/dog, so 5 years before canon. Which to me is in 7 years, so I have 2 years to find him and convince him to join my peerage. Once he got his pieces, he would search for Tobio as Azazel met him already. Depending if he played his cards right, he could befriend Vala and Azazel, who were important characters in the novel. So complicated, but so simple. Regardless, he pulled his phone out and called up his teacher McGregor again. The British mage picked up quickly as he always had his phone near him. Romonus, Sir told me you unlocked your Tuki. Quite an impressive feat. I learned this from Suji, but try to extend it into your blades, which will allow you to cut through defenses easier. I will train in the method. The reason I was calling was because I had questions on the spirit realm. You said we could make permanent contracts with the spirits, and I was wondering why no one had ever contracted the Harvesta. It has to do with power and pride. The stronger beings of the spirit realm are prideful and mighty, so they don't like to form contracts with us. The Harvester in particular can be summoned easily, but it is up to his whim to accept or not. If you are thinking of forming a contract with him to keep him by you at all times, good luck. If you succeed, I will teach you how everything I know about the spirit realm. Until then, start reading the grimoire if you have time. McGregor hung up, so Romonus sat down on his bed and pulled out the grimoire on souls. He placed a hand on the cover before flipping it over to the first page. He first read the first thing McGregor had written. The soul is the most important, vulnerable, and strongest thing we all share. From the weakest of bugs to the mighties of dragons and gods. By itself, the soul is just energy like mana, demonic power, ki, prana, or any number of energies. But once one can tap into their soulscape, one can begin to use and grow their soul, anchoring the soul to its mortal shell. Instantly, Romonus became entranced as his soul was stronger than others. That was because, according to McGregor, the soul of an individual grew as they lived. It was a small growth, but he had lived 17 years as a human before this life. When he was reborn, his soul had been touched by Rahvdall, the god of insanity. During his gestation, his soul had changed to match his new species. The touch of demonic energy and offshoot of mana and all his training had sped the growth of his soul to a level it should not have at this point yet. Even someone like Surzex had yet to touch upon their souls. As usual, only evil dragons, liches, dark mages, or divines had access to the soul. Ajuka was a maybe, which was why finding a mage like McGregor who was paving this path was such a blessing. He had several ideas and inspirations like Mojito Idol Transfiguration, Dark Souls Magic, and Lucius Sograti Soul Magic. He reached out and placed Blood Drinker onto his lap as he read the grimoire. Maybe, if he understood the soul better, he might be able to help Vespera or speed up the reincarnation of killed dragons. He also had to ensure that Valerie Teeps did not fall into the hands of Rise of M. Lucifer. With her, he could remove his weakness to holy magic, silver, holy water, and holy swords. With her, he could resurrect long-dead monsters, heroes, or villains for his service. Regardless, he got rid of all his thoughts and dived into reading the grimoire. Despite McGregor making it as simple as possible, reading this was both reading and esoteric because of the different magic circles he was looking at. As the more he read, the more he felt information enter his mind as he learned things he hadn't thought about before. But after reading only a couple pages in 3 hours, he suddenly felt a splitting headache. He closed the grimoire and rubbed his forehead. Damn. From what he understood of the grimoire, reading it was using soul energy to comprehend, and he was out. Just like mana or demonic energy, it would recover after resting. That was exactly what he did. As still holding Blood Drinker, he fell asleep. He still had more training to do, but that could wait until later. He was far too exhausted from running out of soul energy to do anything, so he slept. While he did so, his demonic energy which was flowing through his entire body began to be converted into soul energy by his soul slowly. Sleeping was the best method to recover from a long day of training, both spiritual and physical. Plus, now having unlocked his Tuki, his recovery was faster than usual. Another trump card in his arsenal for the future for sure. He ended up waking up 4 hours later, and when he did so he rubbed his head. He grabbed his sword and got up from the bed. Damn, reading this grimoire is going to suck. With a quick circulation of his demonic energy, he woke himself up and also cleaned himself off. He would shower later, as now it was time to get back to his training, which never ended up for him. Without his sacred gear, he could only rely on himself, which was fine by him. All his power was because of him, not because of God. He took a deep breath as he opened a teleport circle under his feet. Because he was a noble, he knew of ways onto the earth without needing to take the transport trains. With a flash, he vanished from his room and appeared on Earth, more specifically Antarctica, where no humans lived aside from researchers. It was one of his favorite places to train, as he could go all out without being bothered. The only things that lived here were penguins, seals, whales, and birds. Though, from the look of it, he was alone at his usual spot. Once he was here, he sat down and began to think about one magic that was used by every faction. Barriers, isolated fields, or bounded fields keep the supernatural hidden from the non-magical. Bounded fields are underutilized. If I can use a bounded field to form a domain expansion, I could in theory use Malevolent Shrine or my original domain. One that completely defines me. Might as well give it a shot. He got up to his feet and waved his hand to open a bounded field. Thanks to the teaching he had undergone as both a noble and McGregor's apprentice, his use of field was excellent. He separated a space of 2.5 miles in his bounded field, creating a separate space. Okay, here we go. From his back, his large demon wings with their glowing runic tattoos emerged. He tensed them and blasted off into the sky, where he positioned himself in the middle of his field. He took a deep breath as he raised his hands and formed a hand sign that called to him. One Sukuna would recognize, but if he could steal others' bodies, he could steal his sign. With his field as the core, he filled it with his techniques, aka power of destruction and gravity as the attack. This was a place where he was king. Getting a foe in a bounded field normally just meant they could fight until 1-1. But if he got this right, his bounded field would evolve into a domain expansion. Drawing on all the knowledge he had gained, his years of mentoring and training, he remembered his boss, the presence Rahvdall had. When he opened his eyes, they began to glow a deep purple. Within this canvas, imbue your techniques into this barrier. Dye it in your colors and create an expression of yourself. This is me, Romonus Gremory, heir of the Gremory clan. Destruction made manifest. Domain expansion, catastrophic singularity. His massive bounded field was instantly warped by the expression of his technique. From a simple barrier to keep something trapped, it became the end of the once trapped. The barrier tore apart as thousands of streams of demonic energy and threads of power of destruction began to weave together. The runic tattoos engraved onto his wings glowed deeper as they became amplifiers for his technique. Potent gravitational fields began to force it all together, causing his energy reserves to drain rapidly. It was not an issue, though, thanks to his Gremory clan trait, his reserves were innately higher than other devils. Unlike Sukuna, who created a shrine, he created the embodiment of all destruction. Much like his movie The End, his domain expansion turned the entirety of his bounded field into a giant black hole of energy of destruction, just bigger. Instantly, the embodiment of pure destruction enveloped his domain, which both shocked and overjoyed him. However, in his honest opinion, using his domain like this was tricky because he turned a massive area into a giant power of destruction black hole. With his energy dangerously low, his domain burst apart, and with it the contract. Once it was gone, he took a deep breath, as forming that domain took a lot of his energy. Okay, that one needs more work. He flapped his wings and landed on the ground before retracting them. The end was a powerful move he could use more than once, but his domain made a giant one by converting a bounded field into the core of one. However, fueling a giant one was hard as his energy began to drain rapidly just maintaining it. I better practice to get it down like Gojo and Sukuna. As long as I can use infinitely close to no energy, I will never run out. Though this move wouldn't even be a big deal in Warhammer 40k. It was a good thing that even if he did get sent to Warhammer 40k or Fantasy for any reason, Rahvdall would protect him. The god of insanity would not risk losing a talent like Romonus to a mere chaos god, as those were not even gods. They were just entities formed of human emotion, so they did not deserve to be called gods. Just alien entities from another dimension. As for Romonus, he felt a lot better about finding a better use of bounded fields. Though if he could think of it, couldn't someone else do the same? This needed further consideration. Regardless, he sat down and from his spatial ring he pulled out a pure mana stone. His master gave him several for his use if he ever needed to recover his energy faster. He drained and converted the mana inside into demonic energy to recover his reserves. Once he had recovered his energy, he continued the rest of his training, mainly training and using Blood Drinker, which was immune to the power of destruction because of Vesper. Considering it was used by the Bale clan during the Great War, that made sense. Was that the reason they turned her into this thing, or was it truly just a sick punishment? Only Bale will know, so why did he give it to me? He reached out to her through their contract, which allowed him to communicate with her without having to enter the blade. How do you feel? How do you think? Thanks for the blood. I will need more. I know. I did promise to get you out eventually. I have waited centuries. Waiting a decade or two will just be part of my hell. He raised Blood Drinker and channeled his recovered demonic energy into the blade. Instantly, it was covered in the power of destruction. Time to get this down. He began to spar against what he felt his sword master Suji would do. Chapter 15. Vesper's Confusion and Rias' Worry. Finally fixed the image of Vesper. It gets past the filters now. Image here. Also, I have decided on the name of the domain expansion. Catastrophic Singularity. It was a good thing he had Vesper on his side, as she was a truly powerful being. As the great-granddaughter of Bale and the child of a noble vampire of the Carmilla faction, she was innately powerful. It was for that reason that Bale, his ancestor, had to intervene personally to kill her. He gripped the handle of Blood Drinker, the sword, and thought about it. He had yet to meet the man, but he had only heard positive things. His uncle, grandfather, and even Surzex told him good things about the man. Feeling his doubt, Vesper reached out to him through their link. Whose side will you pick? Depends. He pulled out another vial of his blood and poured it over the blade. He watched as it was drawn inside before thinking. Who is your mother? Vesper went silent but answered. I don't know. Romonus raised an eyebrow as he gazed at the sword. You don't know? No. I was told my mother died at childbirth and I was raised by my relatives. Raised is pushing it, though. He remembered how vampires hated mixed blood even more than devils. He did not know what they would think of a girl like Vesper born of the rape of one of their kind, or was it? And you killed your father because you knew what he did, or thought you did? I was told all my life by the vampires around me that he forced himself on my mother. I felt it right for me to take vengeance, and in the end, Bale himself hunted me down and ordered me forged into this thing. She said the last part with both venom and pain. He looked at the sky while holding the large sword in his right hand. What would you say if you found out you were wrong? I wouldn't know what to do with myself. It has been so long since the day he defeated me. I still remember the day I was forged, having my body ripped apart for material, having my soul forged into this metal, having it chained into place, then sealed away to never be seen again. This sword has had 4 wielders before you, all of the Bale clan, and none ever communicated with me. In the end, I drained their lives to nothing. After that, I was locked away in the vaults of the Bale clan, never to be touched again until you came along. So, the chances you were tricked into killing your father? I'd rather not be the case. Try to hang in there until I can get you out or lessen your pain. The blood helps. Take that as you will. With that, she went dormant again because the chains on her soul tormented her constantly. Blood could only dull her pain, never ended. He sighed as he returned Blood Drinker to the sheath on his hip. It was getting late, and his family might be wondering about him. He opened another teleport circle under his feet, and through the paths he knew returned to his room in a flash of light. He sighed when he was back in his room, as Vesper's existence messed with him. He sighed as he waved his hand and changed his battle suit back to his fancy suit. Once his suit was back on, he walked out of his room. When he opened the door, he saw Rias about to open his door. Rias and Romonus locked eyes as she pulled her hand away. She looked like she was caught with a hand in the cookie jar. Mom said to check up on you? He snorted as he ruffled her crimson hair. Really? Because it looked like you wanted to go in my room. She pushed his hand away and turned away from him. You went into mine. He walked past her with his head raised high. That was your fault because you never wake up. Anyway, I usually train with Suji McGregor and Sir every weekend, sometimes more if they have free time. Tomorrow I will be seeing Suji for sword training, so wake up at 6:30, okay? She nodded. Okay. I need to get stronger. More than you know. She tilted her head. What do you mean? He smiled with a mysterious smile as he walked away. She chased after him, trying to get an answer from him. Come on, brother. What did you mean? You said, more than you know? Why? Is Riser super strong or something? Who knows? I certainly don't. She reached out and pulled on his arm. Brother, you always tell me everything. Why won't you? I'll do anything. He looked down at her and smiled. Anything? Are you sure? She nodded. Yes. He turned around and leaned down. I will do it for a kiss on the cheek. She blushed a little before planting a peck on his cheek. Is that good? He smiled at how cute she was becoming. In a few short years, she would go from an innocent girl to a seductive bombshell. It was almost sad. You need to be stronger so you can protect yourself and everyone you care about. She looked confused. But you and Surzex don't need me to protect you. You two are strong. We might not always be around Rias. If that happens, it will be up to you. He was thinking of Trihexa because Surzex, Serafal, Falbium, Azazel, and many other leaders of pantheons sealed themselves away to defeat the beast. Even then, it would take centuries with all of them to seal it, and he might have to go with them if he could not stop rise of him. Feeling how serious he got, Rias reached out and held his arm. You and Zex aren't going anywhere, right? No, not if we can help it. She hugged him tight, worried. Why? Don't leave me behind. Don't leave me alone. He held her tight as he tried to appease her. I won't. I'm not going anywhere. You know how fast I am growing stronger. Give me another 5 years and very few beings will even be a challenge. I told you, right? I will become the first devil to become a god. Can a god of devils allow himself to be defeated? She shook her head. You better not. She let go of him and ran off somewhere. Seeing how worried she got for him made him smile before his face turned cold. Kateria Leviathan, Shalba Beelzebub, Cruisery Asmodeus, and Rizadam Lucifer. The 4 bloodlines of the Satans will be mine. I just need to push my bloodline into the super devil level and then ascend to godhood. Seeing how strong Serzex was as still immortal, how strong would he be as a super devil turned god? Regardless, that was a goal for the distant future, so for now he went to meet with his parents. They were not worried for him, as it was not uncommon for him to vanish for days in his training. He had been doing so since he was 7, so he just checked on how they were doing. His mother Venelana, as usual, was either managing her husband's large harem or dealing with the business owned on Earth by the Gremory clan. This time, he found her engaged in 20 different calls simultaneously as she dealt with different business decisions. She just gave him a smile which let him know she was busy, so he left her be. His father was in his office as well, working on stacks of paperwork as the Astaroth and Phoenix clans were giving more business deals now that they were going to be married together. However, the Phoenix clan was less happy than the Astaroth, as Rias hated Riser, or at the least disliked him to the point of curing his name openly. After a quick checkup, his father also didn't have much time to talk, which he was fine with. He left his parents alone and instead went back to his room where he had a few things to do. His training for the day was over, so he began to mess around with his hobby, alchemy. As the heir to the clan, his connections were wide, so he had endless resources to use and experiment with. This was both a hobby and a skill worth having, which was why he spent so much time on it. Too bad he was working blind, as alchemy in this verse was limited in use. Unless he could go to China and meet with the gods who were more versed in this than anyone else. He shook his head as he spent the next few hours brewing different potions, or poison in some cases. He would note down the different results when different herbs, monster body parts, poisons, and venoms had when they reacted together. In the end, he brewed a few more blood resurgence potions and some simple healing potions. He even created a new poison which he found some use for, so he noted down the recipe. Once he finished his brewing, he cleaned up his alchemy set and walked to his personal bathroom. Much like everything in Devil Society, it was massive, as it was made with the fact that he was expected to have a harem in the future. Fertility was a common issue among devils, so they made up for it with many female lovers to have a chance to produce a child. For him, it was empty, as his fiancée Latia was still a new relationship. No matter how powerful or mature he was still 11. Damn you, number 11. Turn into 18 already and show me my greatness. He sighed as he showered under the magical water. It nourished his skin and hair along with the body wash and shampoo made for nobles like him. Once all the stress of the day was gone, he got dressed and returned to bed. Though instead of sleeping, he began to train in his Tuki control and his internal demonic energy circulation. Using both at the same time would allow him to increase his physical abilities to new extremes. He did this for the next hour until he felt that it was too late. When he checked his phone, he saw that it was already 3:30 a.m. It was very late, and he only had 3 hours to sleep. That was fine, as he did not need much sleep, so he set his alarm and finally fell asleep. As he slept, he healed from the stress of the day, and for those 3 hours HW as a piece. But as he was used to just 3 hours later, he was awoken at the time of training, 6:30 a.m. He sighed as he only woke up this early on weekends. Yesterday was Friday, which meant that his teachers had time to train him on a day they all had off. Today was Saturday, but he only had to train with Suji in the art of the sword today, as McGregor was off doing who knows what he did in his free time. Mages were kinda scary when they were focused on their research, and McGregor Mathers was no exception. Regardless, he got himself dressed and went to wake up Rias, who was actually awake without him waking her up. She was already dressed in training clothes, and he teleported back to the capital Lilith. To avoid pissing off Graphia, he would use a bounded field to not damage the field again. When they arrived, Suji was already waiting. He smiled when he saw Rias. Rias, glad of you to join us again. I will teach you after I teach Romonus. In the meantime, work on your control or watch us and draw inspiration. She nodded. Yes, sir. Suji then turned to Romonus with a calm smile. He began to draw his katana as Romonus drew Blood Drinker. Show me what you have learned. Right. I'm not one to ask, but if it is not too much trouble, a review would help a lot. Also, any recommendations for the harem? I have a few already chosen, but suggestions might give me ideas. Chapter 16, Sword Duel and Latia's Workshop. Suji was never physically mighty, as Romonus could outperform him in strength many times over. He never specialized in strength or put the most power behind his sword. Instead, he had focused on being the fastest. As a human, his sword style favored quick-paced moves and control, which became his signature skill as a knight, Godspeed. He was both the fastest and most skilled knight of all devils. He had done his best through the years to improve, and he had grown a mastery of his knight piece as no other had before. Ever since he began to train Romonus in the art of the sword, he saw how Romonus took his teachings and changed them to suit his style. Thanks to Serge's insane training, he had unlocked Tuki, a rare skill among devils, and McGregor taught him to use his sword as a magic focus. Now, he was going to show him that one didn't need to be skilled in magic or physically powerful to win a sword match. Romonus gripped the handle of Blood Drinker with both hands as he pointed it towards Suji. Suji held his katana with both hands as both of them stood still. Time began to slow down as both of them let go of everything and focused on their swords. Rias clenched her hands together as she waited for the moment they moved. When she blinked, they had already vanished, reminding her that her brother had many years more training than she did. Romonus had taken the teaching of Suji and his Godspeed training for himself. Of course, he was not yet as fast as his teacher, but he was getting there thanks to his much stronger body. A thin layer of Tuki shimmered around his body, while the demonic energy inside his body increased his physical ability. Both abilities together allowed him to blitz forward as he swung his sword down toward his master. Suji, though, released a hand from his sword and swung upwards against Blood Drinker. Using pure skill, he raised his hand and made Romonus swing against the ground. Don't think so. Romonus gripped the handle of his blade, spread his feet out, and swung back up mid-swing. Vesper, as the core of the demon sword, channeled her own demonic energy, which was massive, into the swing which Suji felt. The knight kicked off the ground and leapt out of the way as an energy wave of demonic energy and Tuki cut through where he was standing. He grinned as he formed a platform of demonic energy and kicked off it to jump down. We're picking up the passe. Speed trumps power. Suji vanished as he swung his blade toward Romonus' neck, who reacted on pure instinct. Tuki allowed one to react to threats against their life, so he swung Blood Drinker down and clashed against Suji's katana. Suji was stopped in his tracks thanks to Romonus' raw power, but he knew Suji was holding back. In the light novel At Full Power, Suji cleaved a leg off the Jabberwocky, a 200-meter-tall monster created by Annihilation Maker, with ease. If he had wanted to, he could have taken his neck at that moment. He still took it as an achievement that he caught the swing. Suji himself was impressed as he moved faster than he usually did in their training matches. You managed to catch my blade. Impressive. Romonus smiled and sighed. If you wanted, you could have cut through Blood Drinker and my head in one go. Suji pulled his sword back. Of course, but I have had over a century to perfect my sword skills. You have not, and still you caught my blade. Not just anyone can do that, and besides, you are not a swordman. You're a spells word. You fight best with your power of destruction, gravity, and spells. If we went all out, you would do much better. Romonus smiled as he did have the best teachers. All right, then Romonus, now time to help you improve. Following the testing spar, Suji spent another hour and a half instructing him on the art of the sword and the technique of Godspeed. Romonus' use of it was weaker because while he was insanely fast, he never specialized in speed. Suji wanted him to rectify that in self-training, as he was just an instructor. It was up to Romonus to change it for his use. As for Rias, Suji gave her minimal instruction and left that up for Romonus. Suji turned to Rias and patted her head with a smile. You know, instead of having you just throw power of destruction at me, throw it at your brother. He is immune to its effects and he is an actual user. Rias smiled and nodded. Yes, Uncle Suji. Suji smiled in Romonus' direction, who merely waved him off. Suji vanished after that, leaving Romonus and Rias behind. He sighed and turned to Rias, who was looking much happier than before. What will you teach me first? The string method or the end? He snorted. Neither. Those are mine. You have to think of your own use of power of destruction. Oh, come on. He raised his head high, crossed his arms, and turned around. Nope. All mine. It took me years to get control over power of destruction to form it into thin threads. You don't have that time, so find a different skill. Plus, the end needs gravity magic, which you don't have. Rias looked down disappointed as she thought both those moves were cool. Fine then, Big Meanie. What else can I do? He turned around and walked over to her side. Okay, then time to teach you. The first thing is that power of destruction does not want to listen. Sir Zex has trained for centuries in the art of having perfect control over it, while I have trained in shaping it into shape. Watch. Romonus released oceans of pod before rapidly turning them into hundreds of threads with ease. He did not use his hands this time and merely used his mind to begin to control them. They spun around him rapidly, waiting for his command. Here's the thing, Rias. This method came about because of my method to control demonic energy. I already knew how to shape my energy into threads. This was just a step in that direction. You won't be able to do this because you have no control over your demonic energy. Rias tilted her head. Huh. Romonus waved his hand and dispelled his threats. You just launch waves of demonic energy at what you want to attack. Power of destruction is formed of demonic energy. Control the former and you control the latter. Get me? Rias now wanted to ask a question she always wondered. Brother, why do you call demonic power demonic energy? You're the only one who calls it that. He sighed. That's what you think about it? I call it that way because it's energy. Why else? Regardless, to improve in using your pod, you need to get your demonic power under your control. He said power with air quotes because it was annoying. His way of calling it was better than anyone else. Rias snorted as she began to laugh at him. Okay, how do I control my demonic energy? She returned the air quotes, making him smile. I will teach you my old instructor's method, the fire method. Make a small fire of demonic energy in front of you. No hands to direct it. Rias looked in front of her and did as he said, doing it rather easily. Okay, now make it orbit around you. When she added a second one, she kept making them spin. Now keep adding more. Make them take different orbits. Change the colors, do what you think needs to be done. Every devil is different, and your path won't be mine. She smiled. Thank you. He smiled as he dispelled the bounded field around them. It's fine. Anyway, I'd better get moving. I got a date with my fiancé today. You know how to teleport home? She rolled her eyes. Duh, I'm not a baby. He looked up at the sky, hearing that. Sometimes I wonder. Rias frowned, causing her fireballs to burst apart. Hey. He just laughed and teleported away, leaving her to her self-study. When she got her demonic energy under control, then he could help her better. Rias sighed before she sat down and got to work on the technique her brother taught her. I will show him. When I make my method, it will be better. As for Romonus, he teleported to the Astaroth clan's main mansion. While Latia was not from the main family, she was treated just as important as the main branch because of her uncle Ajuka Beelzebub. Now that Diodora was dead, the heir position of the Astaroth clan was open. In the light novel, Latia becomes the next heir following the death of the slimy prick. His rotten heart had been put to better use rather than being killed by Shalba. It still made him smirk when he felt the sheer purity and power of his energy after that ritual. The use of Diodora had been the right, but now there was no heir. Considering Latia was now engaged to him, the Gremory heir meant two things could happen. One where she married him and took his last name, or when they wed, they ruled both clans with her as the Astaroth clan head and him the Gremory head. Two heads marrying each other was unheard of, but he was not one to play by the rules. When he arrived at the mansion, he did so in front of the main manor, as each one was heavily warded and guarded. If he had tried to teleport in, the defenses would have torn him apart, or maybe they would not. He didn't want to risk it, so when he arrived, he did so in front of several guards. They turned to look at him as he used a Gremory circle. The head guard, a giant devil in full armor, spoke up. Are you Romonus Gremory? Yes, that is me. The guard stepped aside and opened the door for him. Enter. The young lady has been expecting you. You, lead him to her workshop. He pointed to a random devil soldier who saluted. Yes, sir. Come with me, my lord. Romonus followed the guard, who began to walk him through the mansion. While they were walking, the guard turned to speak to him. I feel like you should know. The clan is in mourning right now, so security is higher than usual. He tilted his head, acting surprised. Why? The guard kept walking, but he explained. The heir, Diodora, is deceased. Assassinated. Romonus turned full circle to gaze at the guard and faked shock. How? It's been just 2 days since I spoke to him. He was fine then. We don't know. Lord Beelzebub has been here to see what happened, and all they found was a pile of ashes belonging to the heir. We have kept it quiet, as this is serious, and we have no perpetrator. Some whisper it was Grim Reapers, others a death mage. But the smart know Reapers only obey Hades, and he has no love or care for devils. I even heard stories of an elder lich, but the few liches remaining keep to themselves. Your fiancée, Lady Latia, was not close to him, but still, I would not bring it up. Noted, and I grieve with your clan. I should see Lord Astaroth and Lady Astaeith to offer my condolences. Please do. The lady has not left her room since it was discovered, but here we are. He led Romonus to 2 heavy double doors made of enchanted metal. They hummed with many formations that Romonus asked about. Is she trying to keep us out? The guard chuckled. No, keep her explosions in. Be careful, she is always making a new weapon, armor, machine, or whatever else comes to mind. Romonus pulled out his phone and first called her. Inside her workshop, Latia was wearing a heavy protective equipment, as from her fingernails a bright blue fire welded some metal plates together. She had turned the mech she was working on into a set of power armor as she got inspired by some more anime and video games she watched. However, when she phone rang with her special ringtone, she smiled and used telekinesis to bring it near her head. Romonus, are you here? I am outside your workshop. She perked up hearing that. Come in then. I have been waiting to show you what I have been working on. Outside, Romonus looked over at the guard, who smiled at him. Those doors weigh 5 tons each. They are opened with some pistons. Just let me dash. No need. Huh. Under the gaze of the shocked guard, Romonus with ease pushed open the doors with just his raw strength. Latia turned when she saw the door opening on their own. Though when she saw it was Romonus, she smiled in admiration. I can't wait to see him in this. She hadn't had someone to give this suit, but she now found the guy.